in a minute, so, and we have a closed session that we need to save some time for. So, Marcus, you want to be in?
Sure. Mayor and Council, just a few things in terms of the agenda overview. Tonight, it's really two pieces. One is that we're attempting to build on some of the information that we received from the retreat. One of the presentations you'll see tonight is from Ron Williams, which deals with, we call it benchmarking report, world-class streets. We're trying to make sure that we're getting information not just from our surrounding jurisdictions, but what's happening across the country in terms of best practices. And then what we're attempting to do is address some of the issues that have popped up over the course of the last year, giving you an update on the red light cameras, the regional jail, as well as design build. So with that said, Mayor, that's what we have for you tonight.
Okay. Thanks. Andy, do you have anything?
Get to the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, anything?
Yeah, I wrote a couple of things down. It had to do with the election last week. I'm sure we all elated with the turnout that we had. Not even talking about the results, but just the number of our citizens who participated in it. But my complaint, as well as others, was the wait time. Now, we anticipated that it would be, a heavy turnout, because when the electoral board came to us and several months ago, we talked about consolidation and, the fact that the state would not allow them to buy any more electronic voting machines, and that if we did something to increase that, we'd had to go to the paper ballot, which I think all of us around the table decided that, we didn't want. But it took up a lot of time at the polling places. In most cases, it wrapped around the building, because that's in a lot of cases. But what's interesting to me is that at a polling place in Berkeley, an order had been sent out by the Department of Parks and Recreation to remove a large tree adjacent to where people were voting. And luckily, Ann Boone and some of the others called down and asked them not to do that. So they didn't, do it. The cynical side of me believes it was an effort to suppress the vote. Over at P.B. Young Elementary, during the height of the election, an unmarked police car came up, lights flashing, doors open, and said they were there for a traffic stop. And they stayed there for about 20 or 25 minutes, doing that. But all in all, it was a good day for the voters because they were not deterred. In addition, if you think about, if you followed the results, had not this council prevented the electoral board from closing or consolidating Valentine with Coleman Place and Hunting Y with the PB Young School, then that would have, I think, diluted the vote quite a bit. And I think it was prudent on the part of this council not to do that. But one thing also, they didn't finish counting the absentee ballots until 12 midnight Sunday. And there were only 6,800 absentee ballots. And I don't know how they count them, but I know that I guess they haven't counted hand by hand. But in a close election, it just seems that would have been, very, very delicate situation. And you and Paul were on the electoral board at one time. And so maybe, we need to get the people down from the electoral board, and if we have time this year, if not early spring, to explain what happened and, what we can do to, improve, that type of thing. I don't think we'll have a vote like that again unless Hillary Clinton runs against Jeb Bush. We'd probably have the same type of turnout, But it was just.
Is that your prediction, Paul?
But it was very unpleasant for a lot of people, but they toughed it out.
Well, maybe we can ask for an after-action review.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think Anthony and I actually mentioned it to Marcus the other day that, and I think we're all just thrilled with the turnout.
Right.
Paul, one of the precincts where they combined was the Old Dominion, the Larchmont Elementary, and at 6 o'clock, that place was the combined precinct was wrapped way around the street.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the places they combined, we seem to have some issues with. I mean, I don't think that was by design. Maybe they just weren't prepared for all that. I don't know. It'd be nice, even as soon as next week, if we could ask the registrar to come in and the electoral board, just so, I mean, the public would, I think, would like to know not only about the long waits, but why it took so long to report it. I mean, this may be an exaggeration, but I think they declared California for Obama before Norfolk actually reported. I mean, so it just, I mean, and these people work hard. Andy knows how hard all these people work. They get paid a few bucks for doing it. I'm not fussing at anybody. I just think we ought to be able to do it better.
And I was surprised too, because Norfolk, following elections for all these years, Norfolk is usually the first one out with their numbers. And we were the last, and I was texting Marcus, even CNN is pointing out that Norfolk's numbers haven't come in yet.
Norfolk City.
And I knew it would turn Virginia, you know? And it was just interesting to see that they were holding up all of the numbers. I don't want to rush the process for, national elections, but it was almost 11 o'clock, I think, by the time they all came in. And there was some misreporting. Even when you went on our website and clicked it on, it was showing a previous election. It just was a little bit behind. So
I think we have a nice open discussion with them, and I don't know if they're gonna be prepared as soon as next week.
I hear you.
But, because
We'll
they
give
are.
them, and if they're not ready by Tuesday, then, sometime in January.
Yeah, let's
But
float
we
them
ought to
something.
keep it up on the table.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And the other thing to that, the issue that I ran across was over at the Jordan Newby Library. And I don't know what the educational process is that they take these poll workers through, but there were several young people who were registered to vote, had their voter ID cards, but they weren't in the system. Before we started telling them to go back and request a provisional ballot, they were being turned away. And I mean, it seems to me like the people who are working the polls need to know the rules. And if a person comes in with the registration card, they got it from somewhere. If the system isn't working, they need to advise them that you can, if you choose to, still make a provisional ballot vote and not just say, well, you're not registered, you can't vote, or there's a glitch in the system and you can't vote. I mean, that was very disheartening to a lot of the young people who had registered, and if it weren't for the attorney from the election day attorney out there and letting folks know that they could go back in and make that request, there would have been a number of those young people who would not. We came across over 100 who, and that's a significant, one or two, not in the system or whatever, but there were over 100. So, and I don't know if that happened on any other campus. It had something to do with the address that they used or whatever, but they did have voter ID cards. And so I don't know what happened there, but for the election officials to turn them away, that was the thing that bothered me the most.
would it be prudent for us to add to our legislative package asking to support any legislation that allows early voting? Because, that seems to be what Virginia Beach is going to be requesting. I don't know, there's a bill, is it Jane Howell that usually sponsors something, but just.
Yeah, I think we can just instruct Brian in that regard, but that's where everybody else is going. This day and age, we ought to be able to have early voting, for sure. Okay, thanks, Paul. Parker, nothing? Mr. Burford?
Oh, man, you got
Long agenda here.
Come on.
Real simple. Mr. Duke, this is for you. I know that the 7-Eleven, the corner of Virginia Beach Boulevard and Ballantyne is coming up, and I want to make sure that someone is out there doing the inspections. They presented drawings to us, and what they presented to us is what we should be getting. And so I just want to make sure, I know we're scheduled to open that store on the 29th of November. And so as we work through that, I just want to make sure that from an architectural standpoint that we hold their feet to the fire. That's all I have.
That's it? Really? That's it?
That's
That's a record. That's happy news.
Angela?
The only other thing I would like to say about the election is, in addition to our legislative package, maybe not for this year, but for next year, in looking at that legislation that will not allow us to buy any more electronic voting equipment, and petitioning our legislators to introduce legislation to change that. Now, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It
I
makes
think
absolutely.
this election on the purposely. I just think that, I mean, but I support what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know,
It
something
worked.
breaks, I mean, we can't even replace them.
Crushed.
You know, it just doesn't make sense. So, that's all I have.
Yeah, two things. One, I noticed after the storm, there's a lot more streetlights out, and I don't know if we pay for them, right? We pay for them regardless if they're on or off. So I don't know how we're assessing that, if that was included in the assessment of damage, but there's just a lot of poles out. And I know it's hard because we rely on our citizens to get it, but maybe if we pick up our press on that a little bit, or reporting a street light out so that we can get more of those taken care of. I know Public Works tries to get them when they can, or asking civic leagues to go and check their neighborhoods and get some of the main roads and things. The second thing was I brought up the issue about the dunes down in Ocean View, and I got a really nice response from in the memo, the council memo from Lori, but it didn't have. It was just more of an informational thing that we're not going to take off the top of the dunes, which that was just one thing that was said. I'm looking for action and somebody going down there and doing an assessment and trying to figure out what's going on. It was a nice reply, but that was something that the Cottage Line Civic League and some of the East Ocean View Civic League members have been asking for some kind of relief, and there was just no indication that staff was going to try to look and address the issue. Just more of an informational thing that came back. So I wasn't sure if you guys were done with that, or if it was just to keep the conversation going.
They'll follow up and see how we're going.
Okay, thanks. And just have them contact Vic York and Vic, so that's.
The only thing, Marcus, I know they had the marathon this weekend. I just sort of understood late today that maybe they had some glitches. Do you know anything about that?
Outside of my, wife.
Did you run?
Yes.
Did you run?
Have delivered, do this.
We don't need to take up a lot of time. but
Sure.
I know the city didn't run it.
Right. Our understanding is two things are going to happen. Before the end of the week, they will have the times for both the individuals who did the half marathon and the full marathon. And that's, I think, Tuesday for the half and Thursday for the full.
They've updated it, so by tomorrow, they're supposed to have 5K numbers, and by Thursday, they're supposed to have the half marathon and the full marathon. They're gonna post them on their website, the Freedom Marathon website, and they're going to send the times to the Boston Marathon, because that's what people are worried about.
Okay, all right, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Well, with that said, we have one item that's going to be in the formal agenda for tonight. That's we talked about it in February, and Frank's going to bring you up to date on this one.
As the city manager has indicated, because we did originally present this item to you 10 months ago, we wanted to give you an update on it as we're bringing it forward this evening. And it is a request by Meredith Investments to approve a special exception for a used merchandise establishment on Princess Anne Road. This image indicates the site. This is the actual bays in which it would be located. It's within the Foxhall neighborhood. And it's the Bay Square Shopping Center. The zoning does permit the use with a special exception. What they've proposed with their special exception is that they be open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. They've committed as a condition there would be no outside storage, display, or delivery, and they would do no auctions. One of the other issues that you had asked for is that they agree to have no used tires. They have agreed to that as well. So just giving you the history. The planning department received the application in October of last year. It went to the planning commission in December, roughly about 7 weeks after we got the application. It was presented to city council in January. came to you for a vote in February, and you continued it until the applicant had a lease on the property because they didn't have a tenant. In October of this year, they came to us with a signed lease that they do have a tenant going into the property, and I'm sorry, I don't know who it is. I didn't see the lease. I was just told by my staff they did provide a copy of the lease, brought that in with them, and they left with it, but they do have a tenant. From the plan standpoint, we think there's an error in the general plan because the general plan designates the whole area as residential. But this is clearly a commercial development. And in the plan Norfolk 2030, it is shown as commercial. One of the other things we do with any used merchandise establishment is look at what's happening in the area. There are no other used merchandise establishments in the area because we do try to keep there from being any kind of a concentration. We do have a letter of support from the Foxhall neighborhood indicating their support for this particular site as a merchandise establishment. At the Planning Commission hearing, the applicant was in support. No one showed up in opposition. And so based on that, the administration recommendation is approval based on all the ordinance requirements, the lack of any similar uses in the area, which means we won't be getting a concentration, and neighborhood support. Planning Commission recommended approval by 5-2, with the proponents pointing out that the neighborhood support is the basis for their support for it. The opponents indicated they don't think the city should have any used merchandise establishments anywhere in the city.
Who were the two?
Mr. Fraley and Ms. Stone.
Most of the other, Frank, use, I think, you have King's Daughters and a couple of places. 9 o'clock seems late to me for a place like that.
It is later than most of the others, I would agree with you, Mr. Ray.
Yeah. And to me, if we let it go 9 until 6 or something like that, but 9 to 9 is just too, in my opinion, it's too late.
That's on that corridor.
Yeah.
Can you give me an idea of where we're
Down
talking?
Princess Anne Road past, Below. If you go down Princess Anne Road, you pass where the old Bank of Hampton Roads used to be on the left-hand side at the corner of Princess Anne Road and,
That's Azalea.
Azalea Garden, yeah.
Then the next big intersection is
Hardee's
there.
And you keep going down there. Frank, on the 9 o'clock, what else is open and what are the hours, what are the other hours that are open in that?
In the shopping center,
Or do
I
they
don't
just
know.
vary?
Nothing else is open in that shopping center.
I was gonna say, we don't control the hours on the other uses in the establishment, in the shopping center. But I would agree with what Mr. Burfoot also said, is that I don't believe there is anything open that late. We didn't have any issue with the closing hours because we've never regulated the closing hours for a used merchandise establishment.
But in general, none of them stay open till 9 o'clock.
I'm not aware of any that are staying open that late.
They may see that it's no need to stay open that late.
But because this is a special exception, city council can impose conditions on them. So if you wanted a earlier closing time, we could do that.
6 o'clock. I would like 6.
6 o'clock,
6 or 7.
6.
We can work with Mr. Fishko's office to get the ordinance changed, and you could indicate to him tonight that's what you want to do. We could go ahead
I'll
and vote on
change it to 6, and we'll note the amendment before you vote on it.
Why don't we do 7 so people can get over work? Let's do 7. 7 to me seems, I agree. I think 6 is
My inclination was 7. I mean, 'cause some
Yeah, I
folks
think
have
7
to work
is
before they try to
reasonable.
get to that. 9 may be too late, but 7,
Yeah.
especially for people who are punching a clock. I think 7.
7. I'm not more inclined with 7.
All right, let's not fight about it. Let's do 7.
Okay, is that it, Frank? You're fine.
That's it.
Can I mention one other agenda item? At R1, this is the land use designation at the Potters, what is this?
It's the church on
The
Military
church,
Highway.
Yeah, North Military Highway.
Yes, sir.
They asked if that could be continued another month. We've already done it once, but both of the parties are still trying to work out the details in this thing. Luckily, I think we actually had it up here for public hearing last time, nobody came. So it's just, R1 is just between the parties, they're the only ones that care about it. And they still need a few more weeks or so to work the thing out, so
I think they're trying to work out who's going to do the installation of the landscaping that's
Yeah,
required.
that's all, that's what they're
They're,
doing.
they're rezoning that property to industry, institutional, so they can be a church.
To be a church, yes. And the neighborhood has supported it, and the only issue that has been raised, and it was the issue that we spent the most time on, was working through the requirements for landscaping the parking lot. Everyone has reached agreement on what needs to be done. At this point, I think it's, they're working with the landlord, trying to figure out who's gonna pay for it.
Yeah, the neighborhood is mostly supportive of it because they don't want another flea market to come there.
That's right.
And so, and I understand that, but if you look at future growth down Military Highway, that whole area needs assistance, it needs help, but I don't know how that fits our future plans for that section, but with commercial on the other side of it,
A church wouldn't be inappropriate here based on the future plans for the area. The issue is you're looking at non-residential uses.
yeah.
The big issue we have on the Military Highway corridor are the things that have been there for decades that just don't come close to meeting our current landscaping requirements. And so that does become the big challenge with everything going in new on Military.
Okay, thanks. Bond finance.
Okay, Darrell?
Yes, for the upcoming bond financings, there's a presentation in your Dropbox that goes through in pretty good detail as we've done in the past. But I want to focus your attention to two items, particularly the new money issuance that we have planned. The first is a wastewater system revenue bond. It's a par amount of $12 million. It's interest-free, issued, authorized by the Department of Environmental Quality and issued to the Virginia Resources Authority. It's a very cost-effective program, of course, with a 0% interest rate. The second transaction, and both of these items are on the consent agenda to schedule the public hearing for next month's meeting. The second new money issuance is estimated not to exceed $60 million. Water system revenue bonds. This will be a public issuance based on our water system's strong AA2 and AA+ ratings. Again, that's going to be that's scheduled to price and close in January and February of 2013. And as we have
We
done,
typically issue water bonds for 30 years?
yes.
Okay.
We try and match them, of course, not to exceed the expected useful life of the assets, which is different than the wastewater program, which we issue over 20 years. The other things are the other three items are refunding items, and as we've done in recent years, we have our minimum savings threshold of 3%, meaning if we're not saving 3% or more, we won't do the refunding. And the ask through this is that council authorize the city manager to effect two refundings, or give him the authority to effect two refundings. One is for the general obligation and water refunding bonds, as we did in May and April of this year, with $100 million not to exceed for water system refunding and $120 million for general obligation bond refundings. Those items don't require council action as they're previously issued bonds. And the last item is with regard to the first new money, the $12 million loan. We have an existing loan that we're seeking a interest rate reduction on. That is deemed a refunding and doesn't require council action for considering the ordinance on December 13th. It's because a new loan document will be put in place without that interest rate. If anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer
The
them.
0% bond, the state's giving that money, they buying the bond? Who
Yes, it's
Why do they have to go through the bond process? Why don't they just make it a law?
so that it's legally, and Attorney Fishkill might speak better to it, but it's so that it's a binding agreement. It's a legal document, so we've got to have that instrument in place.
It is still a loan, and
I
it's,
understand that, but why do you go through it's expensive. I don't know how much we pay the attorneys to.
it's competitive, and that they, in addition to interest, they do want the principal repaid, so it is interest-free, but the documentation is similar.
It is called a bond.
It is called a bond, it is a bond.
It costs money to create a bond, whether you sell it or whatever, right?
Right,
You have
right.
to engage a legal.
Right, and so the same disclosures which you'd have to make for principal and interest are made for principal without interest.
It just seemed to be simpler to just give them a loan.
Right, it would.
No difference, is it?
Uh,
Pay that back too.
Right, right.
Councilman, I think your comments are right on, and while we still have to go through the process of creating the loan document for the VRA transaction, it is much simpler than a public transaction. It's less expensive and not nearly as complicated. I'd also like to mention and commend our development department for its successful efforts in retaining Bauer compressors in Norfolk. The development staff, Kathy Shelton's here tonight, but of course Chuck Rigney and others in the Department of Development have been successful over the past year or so in not only achieving this expansion, but keeping them here. They've been in Norfolk since 1976. This $15 million expansion is anticipated to bring an additional 130 jobs over the next 2 years, and we're excited to keep them in the Norfolk Industrial Park.
I mean, it's an absolute home run. It really is. Of course. Yeah, and let me echo that too, because, you know, I mean, we've had a long and historic relationship with the Bauer family. Actually goes back to when Mr. Bauer was in German and came here to get medical attention in Norfolk many, many years ago. And, but they could take that company anywhere now, I mean, anywhere in the world. They actually export products out of here. So the fact that they like the workforce and the business climate and the location would recommend us to other people as well, but also the number of jobs they've got there. I mean, it's really good work, and it's, you know, so, and I know Chuck and folks worked on that project for a long time. So, thanks. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. As the manager mentioned, on the heels of our ongoing discussions about transportation, I had the opportunity to attend a conference that we thought that there was so much information that was shared in the setting that it was, that it was worth a discussion and sharing of that with council this evening, which is a bit uncommon when someone attends a conference. But this is a unique organization. The National Association of City Transportation Officials was founded in the mid-90s. It's an organization with large cities as its membership. There are some smaller affiliate cities. Arlington is one of the half dozen that are affiliate cities here in the Commonwealth. But we thought it was an opportunity to understand what are the issues that the larger cities are dealing with that are not only directly in transportation infrastructure oriented, but also what's going on in the streets, because that's the message that this organization is putting out. This organization encourages the exchange of transportation ideas and insights and practices, and as a group, they're very influential with what's going on the federal transportation level. And so I thought it was very appropriate to be able to engage with those that are in the organization. It was held the week of October 26, 24-26, and it was very intimate. There was only about 250 participants. So that I had the great benefit then of having good and very frank discussions and some lengthy conversations with not only city officials, but also some non-governmental organizations that are leading the way on some of the issues that I'll highlight here. These are a sampling of most of the major subjects that were discussed. The conference was organized in both plenary sessions and workshops, but also walk shops, which was something unique. We had the opportunity to have New York City planners to actually walk us around in small groups, 2 or 3 hour walks, and explain what it was that they've been doing over particularly the past 5 years or the past decade in economic development and in transportation efforts. The organization is led by Jeanette Sadiq-Khan. She's the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation for New York City. You may or may not have heard of her. She's famous for the bike lanes in New York, for closing Town Square, for pop-up parks and even temporary swimming trailers that go into neighborhoods. This photo here is when she was featured in Esquire's 2010 Best and Brightest issue as one of the 16 geniuses that give us hope. She's very data-driven. She can make a business case for most of the decisions. She espouses the philosophy of rapid implementation followed by capital investment, and that's exactly what she's done, particularly Times Square, one of the most recent examples. And the essence of what some of the discussion in the conference is that as cities, we're going to have to absorb 400 million people by the year 2050, and so we have to prepare for that. We also had the benefit of the Secretary of Transportation there. He gave some insight into federal transportation issues, and particularly the most recent authorization, MAP 21. He mentioned that it's a good thing that it's only 2 years, because that gives an opportunity to come back with Congress and discuss what the future of transportation is. They do not feel that MAP 21 completely addressed what we had, what our needs are, and most importantly, funding. He did state that he believes that Congress has solidified around the Tiger program that was one of the offshoots of the Recovery Act, and that Congress seems to like the program and how it's administered, and that's really probably where most of our major projects in the future will start to funnel through. And that's
I don't know what that is.
That's the investment grant program for transportation projects. So whether it's transit oriented or even trails or even some roads, and they've been using Tiger as the main funnel for applications, rather than working in an earmark environment. He completely embraces Urban Cities agenda, and rolled off a number of items that his secretariat and the Obama administration have done to support Urban Cities agenda, and now it's really that they've got to look for the funding to continue that. He also mentioned something interesting that he's been working on livability principles that he's working with EPA, the DOT, and HUD for a holistic approach to people, the environment, and how we move around. And so that's similar to what we do here, breaking down silos and working cross-departmental. It was good to hear that from him. This is a picture here where he's actually, during the conference, where we went out on one of the walking tours, and we're highlighting some of the new approaches for wayfinding for pedestrian safety, and this is one where it's a very simple message: look before you cross. We had the benefit of, some of you may be familiar with Bruce Katz. He's with the Brookings Institute, which is a think tank in Washington. He essentially gave a very moving discussion, a lot of which is going to come out in a book in the spring that he did promote. But he described 2012 as living in shock times, where poverty is increasing and that there's a desperate need for new jobs, and that the federal government essentially is absent from any agenda for cities. He forecast that innovation really is the next economy. He said if you look at the manufacturing boom, that's already happened. The research triangles in suburbs are last century, and really that what we had in the last decade, that housing really should be a derivative of a growing economy, not a driver. And so innovation is what he sees is the area for growth, and that cities need to create innovative spaces for job growth. So that ties back to the transportation. He reminded the audience that 2/3 of the U.S. population live in the top 100 metro regions, and 3/4 of our U.S. GDP is generated in that same area. He said, to really make the case for why cities, for why urban areas are so important, he said, look at what countries have grown in the world. It's Brazil, it's India, it's China, and all those economies that have exploded have been urban-based. Mayor Bloomberg, at the end of the conference, addressed us, and he made bold statements, but he was rightfully nervous that morning. This was on the Friday before Hurricane Sandy. He even kind of shared what he was wrestling with. That we all wrestle with decisions before major events like that. He was wrestling with what to do with the buses and the subways. Does he pull them on Fridays or pull them on Saturday, or You know, he knew he'd be criticized for whichever way. It was just kind of interesting to see a mayor of a large city with this perspective. But he restated about what his administration has been about, a data-driven government philosophy. You know, shared with some of his administration, 1/5 of the city's land area has been rezoned, 130 new acres of parks have been added, streets are 40% safer as far as accidents. Bike commuting has quadrupled with the addition of 300 new miles of bike lanes and 52 pedestrian plaza encompassing 22 acres of new public space have been added to communities across the boroughs. He jokingly said that the closing of Times Square was harder to do than the smoking ban. But what it's done to Times Square is the rents for those commercial properties have doubled.
You said they closed Times Square.
So close it to vehicular traffic is a pedestrian plaza. There were two reports that I highlight, and they're in your Dropbox, just for information sharing. One was that the organization has established an urban street design guide. This was their first really annual conference or conference of this wide scale as far as subject matter. Typically they've had some smaller conferences that are targeted on one issue, but this is the one that had the biggest breadth of what they discussed, and they thought the release of this was appropriate. It's based on the fundamental idea that streets are spaces for people as well as arteries for traffic. It supports many of the tools we use here in Norfolk and embraces a complete streets philosophy. And as Commissioner Asada Khan said, city officials have had to use federal transportation standards and guidelines that are more suited to highways across the Great Plains, not to thriving cities. And so the plan, the guide, it walks through different types of street types, whether they be large or small, neighborhood-based. It looks at the public spaces, how business relates to that, looks at safety, that streets can be changed, and they show that how that's been being done in the larger cities across the country. And really with this message of Act Now, which is that rapid implementation, that sometimes a very small investment, such as paint or planters, can help change a corridor rather than waiting for a 3 or 5 year huge capital investment to change that. Really kind of a companion to this is what New York released also, and this is with Mayor Bloomberg and Commissioner Asada Khan's data-driven philosophy that all this that they've been doing and changing and thinking about how we use our streets, they've been able to have some measures, and it's based on establishing goals, strategies, and metrics for those strategies. It's designed around safety. The goals are designed around safety, designed for all users of the street, and design great public spaces. And that really supports what they're seeing in that the next generations want things differently, are not as married to the car. And they admit this is not about tree hugging, jokingly, they openly say, but it works. Getting people involved there's a business case for it. And just an example, and this is in your Dropbox to see, it's outstanding some of the metrics that they have. In Union Square, where they created a pedestrian plaza, there are 49 fewer commercial vacancies now. In Pearl Street, which is over in Brooklyn, and I've got a photo of that I'll show you in a few minutes, 172% increase in retail sales. And it goes on and on as far as safety, as far as public support, as far as business growth in the areas that they're doing this, where they're activating the street with people.
You mentioned Pearl Street.
Yes, sir.
I don't know when it was, but earlier this year, I was in New York, and I was at that particular, the area you're talking about, where they have just, closed the streets off, and, there's nothing but shops, up and down. I think it was for a Yankee game or something like that. But they're just, there's nothing but shops and people dining and, shopping in small shops and things of that nature.
I'm going to highlight a few of the sessions and topics that were covered because we're talking about that now, or we're hearing about it, or we have citizens, residents, businesses out there asking for some of this. But this is obviously one of the keystone philosophies of the organization. It is embedded in our Plan 2030 plan, and that is Complete Streets. These images really come from the Boston Complete Streets Guidelines, which is a really robust guideline that they've developed over the past few years. Again, really to reiterate what complete streets are. Complete streets strive to foster the ultimate balance between bikes, pedestrian, cars, and transit. The key message was a focus on streets that connect key destinations, particularly when you're focused on the inclusion of bicycles or even transit in that area. And there was a lot of discussion amongst the cities about this incongruence that's going on right now between federal and state DOT regulations. We've obviously felt that as we've had some of our newer developments, like when we did East Beach, with our incongruence of an urban understanding with our own DOT here in Virginia. But one of the messages too is that there's a vision. It is happening rapidly, exponentially, particularly over the past 5 to 10 years. But on all these issues, not everybody's got it figured out necessarily. They're working their way through these, and that was comforting to see, as it's not just as rigid as some of our former transportation initiatives might have been. We've had a lot of discussion about bikeways. We discussed bike share last month. On the bikeways, really one of the focus and one of the goals in the bicycle world is this notion of 880 bikeways, and that is that anyone who's from age 8 to 80 should feel safe and comfortable bicycling in a certain corridor. And so in order to do that, you often need to have protected bikeways. This is an example here. We show that this is over in Brooklyn, actually, where sometimes you do have the benefit of closing the lane. It can't always be done. But rather than a significant investment, they had jersey barriers with an artist that painted it, and they put the bike markings, and they've had a bike lane that's been used successfully. They also released, right prior to this conference, an update of the Urban Bikeway Design Guide, which was one of the first publications that the organization put out. The update included sharrows, bike boxes, and bike boulevards, which are some newer usage, and I won't get into the different terms there. Obviously, we're using sharrows. Our public works staff has been using this guide as reference as we develop ideas and work with the Bike Commission. I had the great benefit of spending time with the New York City staff on picking their brain about what they're about to launch with their bike share program. I would say their model is what we would recommend, and we mentioned it a few weeks ago, and that is that the infrastructure for the program be 100% subsidized by a partner. Citibank stepped up as the corporate sponsor, and therefore it would be called Citi Bike. They're going to have 350 stations, about 7,000 bikes that will launch in March of 2013, and this is one of them. They were supposed to launch this fall, but this bike, which is an Alta bike, that's one of the companies that makes bike share bikes, they wanted to wait for the latest generation of software and what this bike has built in, which is GPS, so they can have real-time data sharing with the public. So
I do like that. That's a great idea on the bottom, where you have that dedicated bike lane both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to throw streets out right now. I believe that we have 3-lane roads with center medians that people fly down, and you can't ride a bike on those streets because of that. That you could dedicate literally a lane such as that would slow everybody down on the actual street itself. And if you could promote that, one just happens to be on the way to the naval base, you could promote that, because it is a 3-lane road, very wide, that in reality doesn't need to be a 3-lane road, it just fosters speed. That's a tremendous idea. Had we ever, that never even struck me to even contemplate. Has that ever come up, do you know?
We're talking about it in the biking community.
I don't know, but
that bottom one, Terry?
But the issue with that right now that Ron will share with you is that if it's a dedicated lane, then there's some issue with getting federal funding for it. If it's a sharrow, we still get the federal funding. And that's one of the things we're hoping to work with this legislative package. But there's some financial considerations that if it's designated just as a bike lane, then you're not getting the maintenance funding from VDOT. As ironic as that sounds. Yeah.
And then for federal highways, you have to have the Federal Department of Transportation permission to alter federal highway as well.
We have a couple of streets that would be perfect.
Hampton Boulevard.
Well, yeah, you said it, I didn't want to say it, that's it. Hampton, I think Granby, parts
But,
of Granby.
but
at the same
I
time.
agree with you. It's not just that it makes for safe biking, but it makes for safer driving.
I think
Because it slows people down.
it slows them down, it reduces those lanes, but Hampton, Granby, both would be beautiful
Yeah,
with that.
right.
I think we'd be very progressive with something like that. That's a great idea.
So the great benefit is that there is synergy around this and a desire to work through it. You know.
Right.
Even Boston's complete street design guide is well ahead of Massachusetts DOT, but they and Massachusetts DOT was there and openly shared, yeah, we have to reinvent some of how we've been doing this. Controversial they can be, but food trucks was one session that it was
Everybody
great.
Speak up here.
It was great.
Wake up, it's important.
Bring it on.
Let me describe some of what was discussed. That food trucks can be looked at as mobile food, fast food. They're restaurant incubators. That there's low capital costs, higher returns, and flexibility. That there's culinary exploration that happens. That it's a great activation of public space. And then, of course, that the regulatory environment varies by city and state. There were 4 primary cities that shared what they're doing. Portland, LA, Boston, and then we had the president of the New York City Food Truck Association. Now he, Mr. David Weber, he's a Yale graduate, MBA guy. He tried to start a restaurant and failed. And he found that with a $150,000 investment in a truck, then he could learn how to run a business, which he was not naturally inclined to do. He has 60 trucks that are members of the New York Association. He said the great desire of all of them is to own a bricks and mortar restaurant. And he has great metrics and a comparison. He has written a book that he shared some of the insights with us. But really, one of his greatest metrics is that 1/3 of his members have started bricks and mortar restaurants since having a truck, and that none of them have failed. And so it was good to get that insight. Los Angeles was forced into it. There was the Supreme Court issue. They already had a culture of taco trucks down there. And so Los Angeles really still, it kind of is at the table because they're forced to be at the table. Portland is very hands-off. It's not allowed in public spaces, but they allow it on private property. And so they basically say, if it's private property, you can have at it. And they do carts out there. And then Boston is new to the game. They tried it as a pilot project in June of 2011, and it was so successful that now they solidify it. It's heavily regulated. It may be a model for us to look at. That it's so regulated that they get into what is on the menus. And so really that gets at trying to make sure that there is a healthy menu, and that's why they get down into that. They restrict where you can go, but the number of trucks have doubled in that pilot and first year program. So anyway, it was an interesting discussion. I think obviously we'll have more discussion on that in the future.
The latest issue of Travel and Leisure, when ranking cities, they look at different categories, and one of them is availability of food trucks. And Norfolk hasn't made that list yet, but we could.
Food trucks are not outlawed in Norfolk.
I didn't say they were.
So I'm trying to share here
They're
a little bit
outlawed downtown.
of flavor for not only infrastructure and policy, but also programming. And that was what was good to hear. So many of the large cities, a growing trend is to have open streets, is what they call it, which was inspired by Bogota's, Colombia's ciclovia, which essentially is when they close the street to motorized traffic. It is very cyclist oriented, but these have grown into for the public to enjoy. We essentially do that on a small scale here in different ways, but these are not registered runs, they're not registered walks. It's literally opening up, and with a philosophy that one of our greatest assets that generations of residents have invested in are our streets, and so why not use that asset? And New York City does it 3 times during the summer. They actually close Park Avenue, and so there is 7 miles from Central Park all the way down to Battery Park that you can walk, bike, just stand in the middle of the street if you want to and enjoy the architecture. They say that the great feedback they get is about when parents can bring their children in an enclosed area like that and not worry at all about them cycling. It's a great training opportunity. It's a great outreach for healthy living. They also do weekend walks in the boroughs where a neighborhood can apply to have essentially kind of like a block party, and that we do, a lot around here, but they're definitely just on larger scales, and they're typically a half day. So it's something for us to think about as we have a growing demand for cycling here in Norfolk, and also with the success of Meet, Greet, and Imagine, and some of the bike rides we've had in the month of May. There's great opportunity for consideration of this type of activity.
Ron, I take it you told them how cutting edge Norfolk is because we had Granby Mall, didn't you? Years ago. We would have been seen as the most cutting edge community in the United States.
Sure.
What we had. Unfortunately, ours didn't work at the time.
Sure.
But these guys are just following up behind that. But they didn't have boots either.
I'll share with you one of the walk shops that I went on. If you've been to Brooklyn, Mr. Rick, you mentioned about Pearl Street. And I basically kind of summed up essentially what happened over there is that they rethinked, they reused, they redeveloped, and they created a renaissance that really was organic. I like Brooklyn because it's a similar scale, as far as the architecture, the size of the streets, the area. We did a walk from the downtown in the courts area, and ended up down near the water Street in Dumbo, which is down under the Manhattan Bridge. Some of the things they did that just is kind of rethink how you do things. They closed a street, created a plaza. Now, it was raining when we were walking around, so you're like, where are the people? But it was the middle of the day and it was also raining. But they closed the street. What it did in that area was retail increased, transit connections had better timing, and it was a better flow of traffic. So that's a pedestrian plaza. Next to that is where they are doing redevelopment. Here, this was where this past summer they had a pop-up retail market and an urban garden. I'm ready. Reestablishing urban forest is some of what they did. What the planners admitted is that the strategy of the 80s was that as they saw the exodus, particularly of back office operations of the major financial institutions go to New Jersey, they saw Brooklyn as where they wanted to get those corporations back into the boroughs. And so they established an economic development plan with serious rezoning and incentives to attract businesses there. They didn't come. It became residential. And residential developments primarily what was the driver in that area. And with the residential, then you have people, and people want different things, and what they had that organically grew was small business. And there are 3 business partnerships, much like our DNC, that were with us and described, and what their role has been in this. And as try as they might to get someone to come and relocate, what they find is that really they need to support the businesses that are there and help them grow. And that's what they've seen, particularly that's really happened down in the Dumbo area. These 2 are key. In between the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge, essentially there was a barrier. So a lot of the redevelopment had only happened in between those basic infrastructure barriers. This was closed off by a chain link fence, and the Department of Transportation kept their trucks in there. On the other side is where this is at Pearl Street. And it's more of a historic wharf area. They opened this up. This has become a venue where you can have several thousand people attend a concert. They've held a boxing match there. They let artists do light shows there. It brought the economic development across here, and where this had been 4 or 5 streets that came together in this very open, not pedestrian-friendly area, this was Jeanette Sada-Khan's first plaza, where she literally just painted a green triangle, and this is where the retail is up 172%. So just some idea sharing there. Lessons learned. The message from the big cities, and this is on 7th Avenue here in Columbus Circle, is activate the streets through design, partnerships, and programming. All of where you see these type of plazas, there's a business association or the retailers that help support that activity. It's not all done by the city. The city did the very low investments of the planters, which are plastic, and the paint, and then it's up to the businesses or the business association around there to take care of that, and it activates the space. Transit, pedestrian improvements, bikeways, and the use of technology are key for everything that you're doing and what was discussion. Rapid implementation, as I mentioned, and then to really prepare for reurbanization as the population shifts that we've seen, particularly after the last census data, is coming back to cities. And the final thoughts is, so I went up there really on a benchmarking exercise, and as I mentioned, it was comforting to see that the large cities don't have it all figured out. That because we here in Norfolk are actually thinking about this, essentially we're running with the big cities and what we're doing. People would say, you're from where? And we're Norfolk, Virginia. I'm the world's largest Navy base. We have a light rail system. We have passenger rail here. We have a port. We have a cruise terminal, an international airport, and on and on. And they start to say, oh yeah, okay, well, so it's just a smaller scale, but you're doing the same thing we're doing. Plan 2030, Plan Norfolk 2030 does have a complete streets objective. It solidifies our commitment to improving transportation for all. But we have to continue to look for what's the next thing. And we know that to continue to capitalize, particularly what's happened on the past 2 decades, as we've seen improvements across the city and in the downtown, we've got to continue a vision for innovation and placemaking like we've been working on over the past 2 decades.
I would just add to something that you just alluded to. No, we're not at the scale of a New York City, Chicago, LA, but you can convince you. When I look at what you brought back and what we're doing, it's been pretty much defined to downtown. And you spoke about New York City, but then you spoke about the barrels and how they were doing various things within various communities, creating a sense of place outside of Manhattan, whether it be Queens, whether it be Brooklyn. And so I, shrink that down to say you can do the same things, whether it be in an Ocean View, whether it be in a Broad Creek, but various areas throughout the city. And I think you need to look at those areas to see how you can cultivate those types of ideals in those communities as well. There's an element of vibrancy that is happening within those communities, but it has not been cultivated or given the level of planning that we're doing downtown. I know downtown is our heart, and we want to create an economic engine there, but it does not mean that we cannot create a quality of life that's conducive to those areas as it would be downtown. And so you could find center points, you could find lanes where you can open up various areas to create the same type of synergy as well. So I would, as you go forward, I would hope that you would look at those areas.
My big concern is always about process and not letting the bureaucratic processes slow this type of stuff down.
Sure.
And I know we've had presentations on how we're going to fix this, and but we have to speed things up like this because we get lost and we get frustrated people through the process.
Councilman Smigiel, I think that's a great cue up for us. We actually, I don't know if Ron planted that, but we actually, for the last couple of years, have tried to fill a position, a transportation strategic planner position, and we filled it. It's Dave Castillo. He has 25 years of experience. Ron mentioned rapid implementation. He's the kind of person that can help us with that. He's been in Fairfax. Currently, he's the Director of Transportation Services for Loudoun County, so Fairfax, Loudoun County, Virginia Beach. Again, 25 years of experience, and that's going to help us with implementation. In other words, getting somebody who's been around this for a quarter of a century, and we're very, very pleased. He'll start in January.
What is this position?
This is the position that we've been trying to recruit for, gosh, almost 2 years now. It's the Transportation and Strategic Planner. So this is what will be on his plate, implementation.
Well, I tell you, how Terry mentioned they've already discussed that closing of a lane on it. I think that, I would hate to lose that opportunity. I think that's key on several of our streets to be able to do that. And the connections that run north-south, especially, you have the university there, that's huge to be able to do something like that. And to be able to close that lane, and that kind of stuff shouldn't get away. The food truck issue shouldn't get away. I think that at times the chickens shouldn't get away. And I throw those in
They're
because
gone.
they shouldn't be.
Some things we can agree on.
And does that mean you're changing your
I mean, there's
position on
a
chickens?
whole magazine on
Terry, we might have
chicken.
picked up another.
There's a whole magazine on chicken hobby now, okay? But that being said, but what I'm saying is,
What it's got to do with is moving ahead.
yeah, moving ahead is what I'm saying, is that we know we can
You
talk
either-
about
You
things.
either figure it out and dispense with it or whatever, but you're
Yeah.
right.
It's been a great pleasure to see people using the Sharrows. There's a
Oh, I
small
think it's-
small section on Ocean View Avenue,
Yeah.
but they've now put it up Granby Street towards
Yep.
Corner, and I see people every morning going to school. It might only be one or two, but I think over time when people catch on and they realize it's actually safe to do it, and drivers learn how to respect that. I mean, it's just
The key to
great to
that
see that.
is going to be education.
Yeah, I
People
agree.
don't know about it, people
Right.
don't understand, both drivers and riders, so that's the key. But I have to throw this out there because I feel passionately about this. The offshoot of all of these complete streets and walkability and bikeability is another goal that I think we should have, and that's healthy citizens. And when I first saw complete streets, it actually was at a conference talking about fighting childhood obesity. But it's that whole package. And it's communities together, families together, getting people out moving and connecting with each other. And so it's pretty neat when you look at it that it's more than just transportation per se. It really is building communities. And I think it's a fabulous. And I'm excited about what Ron had to say about the fact that doing things quickly and fast in small steps can make huge differences.
Terry and I, maybe about a year ago, we had talked about closing Granby Street, one side of Granby Street, from one end of the city to the other, and letting people ride their bikes up and down and go out. And I know the police chief is over there saying no, but to bring all of the community, I mean, there's one street that connects all of our wards basically together is Granby Street, and to get people out just celebrating Norfolk that way. We did it downtown. So let's grow it. Let's continue going.
Well, we close it for
Never
St.
seen that
Patrick's
all
Day. Close-
Yeah, and
we close a good quarter
runs
of
on
it.
There's
all
very
sides.
little traffic
His
downtown
family
on
one
weekends.
doesn't.
And
Yeah,
imagine
they
if you
It
closed the
does.
streets in downtown and brought people down in
Granby Street?
weekends together. It'd be very neat.
Over by,
Oh, I agree.
Boston closes
Nowhere
their
to charge.
major
No, that's not-
thoroughfare
they must be.
on weekends for
We don't care
biking and
about
joggers. It's the biggest road, the most important road they have in Cambridge is closed every weekend for bikers and
I think we're gonna give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of pushback we'd get from the merchants.
I think they'd
I
be
think-
thrilled to
yeah, I
get
think
people
it-
down there.
Drive
If
people
they were
down.
enlightened, that they would, but some people.
Yeah.
I know when we talked about closing Granby Street for this Imagine thing, Terry, you're the one that came in here and said some people didn't want to do it.
Well,
I mean-
that was not because they didn't want to close the street. They wanted a bigger deal. They were worried that it wasn't well enough planned, and they were wrong because it went off well. But their concern was not about closing the street. Their concern was that we needed to market, spend more time on it. But,
So we're talking about closing Granby Street?
No, let's
No.
not get into all this.
We're giving an
We got-
example,
we got-
which-
we got lots of
We can
things to
talk
do.
about
I'm
that.
just saying, little steps can
Don't
be
let this
done
get you all
that if sold well can make a huge difference in a community.
But I did hear from Ocean View to downtown.
That's an
Yeah, why
option.
not?
One
Let's do
thing
it
you
one
could do
day.
for an afternoon
Just celebrate it one
on a
day,
weekend.
give it a shot. Who knows?
I don't have a problem.
Yeah. Who knows? One day in the spring when it's a good day.
Hell, we talking chickens, I mean, hell, I have a problem closing the road.
Maybe even throw a race in.
You
All we
guys
can do
get
to
on
get a
something and
marathon.
you won't let it go.
Okay.
Get a bike race, get a
You wait, there's a lot of
pedestrian
chicken
race.
voters out there. You just wait.
That one
Yeah.
I wait for.
Tax on their three-wheelers or
You
something.
get a great thing going,
Have a
Okay.
chicken race, yeah.
have them stop at
We
Ward's
got,
Corner.
we still got some stuff to cover here before we finish. Marcus, this is on you now. I
Yes,
mean, we're
okay,
running late.
John. Well, we have, Mayor and Council, the next couple of presentations are pretty fast. And if we don't cover any of them, they can wait until the next meeting, if we start to run out of time.
Okay. Good evening. I'm going to talk about design, build, and construction management as procurement options. Currently, the city procures our construction through the traditional process of a design by one consultant, then we bid it out and award the construction contract to the low bidder. We want to discuss two new processes that have been allowed under state law for a few years, but require a specific action by the city council for us to use them, and that's called design, build, and construction manager at risk. The state procurement code allows for use of both of these methods as procurement methods, and the modification of the city code would be required for us to take advantage of them. The traditional process we've used on most construction is design, bid, build. It's used on nearly all of our projects. The design is done by an architect engineering consultant. The project is then bid out and awarded to the lowest bidder. In some cases, it may be advantageous to use some alternative procedures that have been used at other places in the Commonwealth and around the country and the world. The first one, design build, where you have a single contractor who performs both the design and construction for the project. Typically, a construction contractor and an architect engineering firm will partner to do that. The second is a construction management at risk, which where you still have the city hiring a contractor to do the design, but the contractor is selected based on multiple factors, not just the low bid, but based on other factors, and is responsible for the construction under a guaranteed maximum price concept. The council could amend the city code to allow for the use of design, build, and city CM at risk on selected projects. It is allowed by the state code, but it requires us to modify our city code. Use of these methods would be on only specific projects and would require city manager approval and would require specific written procedures to be developed for use of both methods in accordance with the city attorney's office to make sure that this was done selectively and with appropriate caution. A little more on each of them. Again, design, build. The single contractor is responsible for the entire project. This reduces the possibility of design conflict issues and the resulting change orders. The selection is based on qualifications and experience of the firm as well as price. It requires the establishment ahead of time of design criteria to establish quality levels, and typically a guaranteed maximum price is negotiated with sharing of savings below the guaranteed maximum price. The most recent example that we've had of that is the Norfolk Public Health Facility that the city built was done under this method. At that time, we had specific state authorization just to do that one project using design build. Construction management at risk, the design is done by a separate A&E consultant. The construction contractor is selected based on qualifications and experience as well as price. Then the contractor selects and bids out the subcontracts. Typically, again, a guaranteed maximum price is negotiated with shared savings below that guaranteed maximum price. The contractor can be involved earlier in the design process to improve the design, constructability, and price. That's one of the advantages in both of these methods, is the earlier involvement of the contractor so they can be involved in helping us find better ways to do the project at lower cost. On CM at risk, the contractor fee is fixed, so the contractor has an incentive to control costs. A recent example of this was the Virginia Beach Convention Center was done using CM at risk. The design, bid, build, the traditional method, just to go back to that, the low bid is on a design produced by the A&E. The low bid process can result in project challenges, quality, change orders, adversarial relationships, and sometimes that affects time. On the other hand, the low bid process does provide the assurance of fairness and economy, so when we use these other methods, we need to be careful, and in fact, the procedures require that there be a determination that there's an advantage to using something other than the traditional design bid build process. Our recommendation is to revise the city code to use CM at risk and design build methods to allow those to be used, but the approval would be required by the city manager, and they would be used in limited cases.
John, is it your intention, if we go to either one of these, to pre-qualify a group of contractors that you would let participate in this process?
You essentially do that. You go through a two-step process. The first is determine a group of firms that you want to deal with based on their qualifications. That's essentially a pre-qualification. And then there's a second phase where you get into the pricing of the project. So, yes, sir, that's what you're doing.
Open it up to.
Yes, sir.
You wouldn't have to pre-qualify. It would be the same criteria that you're using now.
Well, I would think if you went through the pre-qualification process, you'd be better off doing that ahead of time rather than doing it for each project. But,
You can do that, yes, sir.
Mayor and Council, because of time, and the next two items are not time sensitive, I'd recommend that we could go into the closed session.
All right.
Move the members of council assemble in closed meeting on November 13, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. for the purposes set out in clauses 1 and 3 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and that is discussion of candidates for appointee city boards, commissions, and authorities, and discussion of the disposition of publicly held, publicly owned property in downtown. Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Protogiru?
Aye.
Mr. Riddick?
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel?
Aye.
Dr. Whibley?
Aye.
Ms. Williams? Mr. Wynn? Mr. Frame? All right.
Personnel.